تولى العمر في سهو وفي لهو وفي خسر، فيا ضيعات ما أنفقت في الأيام من عمري، وما لي في الذي ضيعت من عمري من عذري، فما أغفى لنا عن واجبات الحمد والشكر. أما قد خصنا الله بشهر أيما شهر، بشهر أنزل الرحمن فيه أشرف الذكر، وهل يشبهه شهر وفيه ليلة القدر، فكم من خابر صحى بما فيها من الأجر، روينا عن ثقات أنها تطلب في الوتر، فطوبى لامرئ يطلبها في هذه العشر، ففيها تنزل الأملاك.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا مزيدا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. This is our 16th class on the chapter of fasting from Zaad Al-Mustaqni. We left off at the author's statement: أو أدخل إلى جوفه شيئا من أي موضع كان غير إحليله، أو أدخل إلى جوفه أي شيء أو أدخل إلى جوفه شيئا من أي موضع كان غير إحليله. So the author is saying inserting something into a cavity other than the opening of the urethra. So he says if you let anything enter into you, it invalidates your fast. According to the author, and this is actually the selected opinion of the Hanbali madhab, if you go get checked, and they, for example, they insert anything in you through the nose or any point of entry, with the exception of the urethra, the fast is invalid. This could happen at times, medical emergencies. Sometimes it's medical conditions. Sometimes it's permanent medical conditions. And sometimes it's medical exams where there may be an opening, or they have to insert something from an opening, or they have to make an opening. And they, for example, in medical exams, they insert a scope to see what's inside you. According to the author, to the Hanbali madhab, this invalidates the fast. In reality, the correct opinion is that it doesn't invalidate the fast, contrary to the Hanbali madhab. Unless the object they insert has like oil or grease on it, then that may be valid grounds to invalidate the fast. The correct opinion, in that adopted by Ibn Taymiyyah, who's a Hanbali, as we say, is that it doesn't break the fast unless that opening becomes an alternate to the mouth in eating. Meaning, they start using that opening as a nourishment to you. For example, the feeding tube, that invalidates the fast because that's an alternate to eating and drinking. That's a replacement to food. So that would invalidate the fast. The author made an exception about the urethra. Because why did he make that the only exception? Because according to him, inserting in there doesn't reach the stomach. It either comes out with the urine, it's forced out with the urine, or it gathers in the bladder, whereas it doesn't hit or reach the stomach. So according to the author, for example, rectal injections or insertions, they invalidate the fast, while the injections to the urethra does not invalidate. And we said the correct opinion is both of them don't invalidate the fast. Rectal injections like the Motrin they use for fever, they don't invalidate. Just like the urethra injections that they use for medical situation does not invalidate the fast. In summary, we said the adopted opinion is that inserting something into a cavity does not break the fast unless the object has grease or oil on it, or unless it's some kind of replacement to food and water. The next point that the author mentions is awistaqa'a. Awistaqa'a. Istaqa'a is inducing vomiting. The author said inducing vomit. If one induces vomit and he does vomit, it breaks his fast. If he does not vomit, when he induces vomit, it doesn't break his fast. That's an important point you got to keep in mind. If one induces vomit and he actually vomits, whether it's a little bit of vomit or a lot, that breaks his fast. Next, what comes from the throat, someone, could spit a lot or something could come from the throat. That's not considered vomit. That does not void the fast because that's not from the stomach. It's something that may gather in the throat, dry or humid days or whatever it may be. If that comes from the throat, that doesn't void the fast. Inducing vomit is not only by putting the finger in the throat. It could be by looking at something you dislike, purposely. Sometimes purposely smelling something you dislike. Or squeezing the stomach. Or maybe sometimes some people hear stuff they don't like. If you do any of that on purpose, if one intentionally induces vomit in any of those, intentionally, keep that word in mind, then his fast is void. Their proof is, من استقاء عمدا فليقضي ومن ذرعه القيء فلا قضاء عليه. Sunan Ahmad, Musnad Ahmad and Sunan Abu Dawud, whoever's overcome by vomiting, then he's not required to make up the fast. Whoever vomits on purpose, he must make it up. The hadith is clear. The second opinion is, vomiting does not invalidate the fast at all. It doesn't matter if it's intentional or if he vomits unintentional. And their rule, the people adopted this opinion, it's based on a rule they have, is negating fast is by what goes in, not by what goes out. And that's a wrong rule in itself, because if one releases semen during fast, then it invalidates their fast according to them. So how is it you say that it's only that which goes in that invalidates the fast? The correct opinion is very clear on this matter. Forcing or inducing vomit invalidates the fast, for the hadith we mentioned. And the rule the other opinion chose has no foundation to it. And it goes actually against the hadith. And it's not, the rule itself is not backed by proof. One of my favorite shuyukh in fiqh and in other matters, Atiyya Salim, rahimahullah, he was a student with my father under Shaykh al-Shanqiti, the author of Adwa al-Bayan, the famous Adwa al-Bayan. When Shanqiti, rahimahullah, died, Shaykh Atiyya, who was a colleague of my father, he's the one who finished compiling Adwa al-Bayan, because Shanqiti didn't finish it. He died before finishing it. He also took over the chair in the haram where Shanqiti was teaching. So that's how a colleague of my father turned out to be my father's Shaykh, and later on my Shaykh as well. And as a kid, and throughout his life, every Ramadan, all the way through my teens, from when I was a kid until when I returned as a teen and in my early 20s, every Ramadan he would do the Fiqh of Fasting, rahimahullah. And either Fiqh of Fasting, he would include their stories of the story of Badr on the night that it happened, and matters pertaining to that. And among that, he said the wisdom between differentiating between purposely inducing vomit and when it comes out naturally, as the hadith distinguishes, he said that when one purposely induces vomit, a portion of that returns to the stomach. Whereas when it comes out naturally, it comes out with such force and strength that nothing returns to the stomach. That's one of the wisdoms he drew in differentiating between the two in the hadith. The bottom line that it's clear. Purposely inducing vomit through any means, as we mentioned, voids the fast. Accidental or natural does not void it. Now the next one he mentions is istamna, which is masturbating where the sperm fluid exits. Masturbating where or to the point where the sperm fluid exits. It could be by hand or other means. This invalidates according to the four imams. There's a group of Zahiriyya, and there's a few contemporary scholars who said it does not break the fast. And their reason is it doesn't have no proof. The proof that the four imams chose is that the hadith says يَدَعُ طَعَامَهُ وشرابه وشهوته من أجل. In the hadith al-Qudsi, Allah says about the person observing the fast, he abstained from his food, his drink, and his pleasure for my sake. And his pleasure, and his pleasure. Notice that word. That word used here in Arabic is shahwatahu, pleasure, which means in this hadith sexual pleasure. How do you guys know that though? Someone's going to ask, how do you know that? In another hadith, totally different topic, the Sahaba asked the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if one of us attends to his pleasure, does he get reward? Ya Rasulallah, يأتي أحدنا شهوته ويكون له أجر? The Messenger confirmed the usage of the term by his response. When they said desire or pleasure, it meant the sexual pleasure. The Messenger said, لو وضعها في حرام. If he does it with haram, meaning sexual pleasure, will he not get sins? The point is, the word pleasure in the hadith, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the hadith al-Qudsi, they leave that for my sake, means and includes masturbation. The term was clearly defined as so by the second hadith, where the Messenger ﷺ understood the term shahwatahu as sexual pleasure. That's one. Another proof they used is that vomiting negates the fast, as we said, inducing vomiting. And hijama, cupping, negates the fast according to the Hanabila. This is based on the Hanabila rationale. They said the common denominator between them two is they both weaken the body. Cupping, hijama, and inducing vomit weakens the body. That's what they have in common. After vomiting, you dehydrate, you feel weak. And then when you, for example, cupping is like giving blood. Donating blood. What do they tell you when you give blood? You got to eat, drink certain things because you might dehydrate to compensate for that which you gave. They said the release of semen weakens a person. And that's one of the wisdoms behind the fact that it breaks the fast. They used, first of all, the hadith, and then they used analogy, qiyas, or rationale rather. Just like vomiting and hijama weaken, they said, so does masturbation. So it's included in that it voids the fast. They used hadith, and you could either call the second one either qiyas, analogy, or rationale. The next one is, أو باشر فأمنى أو أمذى. أو باشر فأمنى أو أمذى. We talked about masturbation. Now it's fondling. Fondling as in kissing or touching. And the sperm or pre-ejaculatory fluid exits. The sperm, that's a condition. So he's saying fondling, in here fondling means kissing and touching. Kissing and touching to the point where the sperm or the pre-ejaculatory fluid exits. Bashar in Arabic could mean sex, sexual relationship, and it could mean touching or kissing. The pre-sexual contact, usage of hand and other matters. From the context, it's clear. Here, it means touching and kissing. According to the author, if he ends up releasing sperm or pre-ejaculatory fluid, then it voided his fast. Release of sperm during playfulness with his wife, according to the author, voids the fast, and it's just like masturbation because it reached to the point where he released the sperm. The Hanbali opinion is that one who masturbates short of releasing sperm or pre-sperm fluid, it doesn't void the fast. And if one is playful with his wife, without intercourse, of course, and without sperm or pre-sperm fluid released, it does not void the fast. This is according to the Hanbali madhab. We need to stop here for a second. And we're not saying masturbation is haram or halal. That's not an issue here. I believe it's haram, but we're talking about whether it breaks the fast or not. Here he says, أو أمذى. He said, if sperm or pre-sperm is released. He mentioned and specified sperm and pre-ejaculatory fluid and stated if it reaches that point, it breaks the fast. Now what he mentioned is madhi, pre-sperm. And it's a sticky fluid that's discharged when one is aroused. It comes unintentionally, and it's really the classification of it as to its purity. It's between urine and mani. It's right in between urine and mani. Mani or sperm is pure, and one must shower after it. Urine is impure, it's najis, and one must wash the clothes or whatever it reaches or touches. Now, madhi is a different one. It's pre-sperm. The ruling on it, it's between those two. One must wash his private parts, including the testicles, but no showers needed, and you don't have to wash your clothes where it reached. Islam made it easy because it's common among some men. Sprinkling the area is sufficient. And that was narrated by the Messenger ﷺ, and it's in Sahih Bukhari. The madhab of the Hanabila here, and the one the author adopts, it's the madhab, is that the release of madhi, pre-sperm, pre-ejaculatory fluid, is like sperm in that it avoids the fast. So the author's opinion is that the release of madhi voids the fast. Many sperm is pretty much clear in that it voids the fast. There's an issue with madhi though. That's where we have the issue. The pre-ejaculatory, pre-sperm fluid. The Hanabila say it voids the fast. But there's no proof for that one. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah went against the madhab in madhi, in the matter of madhi, which is the pre-sperm liquid. He went against the madhab and he said it does not void the fast because it's a lesser desire than many, than the sperm, and it's lesser in weakening the body, and it's totally different than sperm, and it's uncomparable to sperm. So he went against the madhab in that, and he's correct. The correct opinion is what Ibn Taymiyyah stated. This is a ibadah. This is a ibadah, it's a worship. In order for you to say something voids this ibadah, something voids this worship, we need proof on it. And there's no proof that pre-ejaculatory fluid voids the fast. The next one is أو كرر النظر فأنزل. أو كرر النظر فأنزل, which is ejaculation after repeatedly looking. He repeatedly looks, means he looks at something which causes him to ejaculate. And repeatedly looks means over 2 times. If he looks once but not twice and ejaculates, his fast is not void. Because the Messenger ﷺ exempted the first sudden glance. فَإِنَّ لَكَ الْأُولَى وَلَيْسَتْ لَكَ الْآخِرَةِ. You're not to be blamed for the first, but you have no right for the second. So the first one, you're exempted. The second one, you're not. Sometimes someone's desire is so strong that at a first glance, the first unavoidable glance, he may release semen. Sometimes people have strong desires where at just a mere first glance they release semen. That happens. Just like one is exempted in the first sudden glance, he's exempted along with the glance in the matter that if he ejaculates during that glance. He's exempted in both the glance and if he ejaculates in that first glance. If he looks once but he keeps staring to the point that he releases semen, it invalidates the fast because continuous glances or a continued glance is like a repeated glance if not more. It's like repeated glances if not more. Now another point. If one thinks, is no longer looking, using your eye, thinks or imagines something until he releases semen, that does not void the fast because the Messenger ﷺ gave us the ruling on such matters. Allah forgives my followers of what their souls may whisper or suggest to them as long as they do not act or speak upon it. Sahih Bukhari, The hadith is, إن الله تجاوز لأمتي عما وسوست أو حدثت به أنفسها ما لم تعمل أو تتكلم. Let's take a recap on what we learned. If you notice, I try to summarize after the long arguments between the ulama, because we have a variety of listeners here and throughout the world. Some are top students of ilm, that's why we have to mention details. And we have to go in depth. That covers for them. Some are average. They want to get an overall idea of what the situation is. And some are not really talabat ilm, so we give them the bottom line. We have a variety, so we try to gear the classes so that everyone can benefit from it. That's why at times I repeat and I say summary or we recap. So a person who may not be a student of knowledge, who may not be able to comprehend those many details, can at least get the summary out of it. So in summary, in recap for what we did or what we mentioned is, first of all, playfulness with the wife. If he releases semen, it voids the fast. Playfulness with the wife. If he releases semen, it voids the fast. Intercourse, that voids the fast for sure. The second one is playfulness with the wife. If he releases pre-semen or pre-ejaculatory fluid, does not void the fast, which is the medi, unlike what the author chose. The third one is a short innocent glance that causes one to suddenly release the semen or pre-semen does not void the fast. He's exempted in the look, he's exempted in the consequence of it. It's an innocent look. The fourth one is repeated glances or a long glance. If one releases a pre-ejaculatory fluid, the madi, does not void the fast. The fifth one is repeated glances or a long glance. If one releases semen, the mani, it does void the fast. Keep in mind that long and repeated glances are haram. That's a side sin. That's additional sin. That's not our point here. And that's why we don't talk about that. We want to stick to our fiqh of fasting. Number 6, thinking does not invalidate the fast if semen or pre-semen is released. That's, of course, if it's only thinking, not touching or anything other than that. He just thought of something and he suddenly released pre-semen or even semen. If it's just the thought, it does not void the fast. How about if one starts talking to his wife? He talks to his wife in a sexual nature and he releases semen. What's the hukum on that, mashayikh? If we had time, I would love to hear your input on these matters before I mention the answer and ruling on them. But it would be doubling or tripling the time, and they wouldn't be able to quickly upload it for the others to watch it. So we want to take advantage of the time. But the answer to that is, if one talks sexually in a sexual nature to his wife and he releases semen, it's like repeated or long glance. Sexual talk with the wife, if you know it's about to release semen, you have to stop. You can't allow it to go to that extent. It's like one who repeatedly looks at that which arouses his desire to the point of him releasing the semen. Next. The next one is أو حجم أو احتجم وظهر دم. Performing cupping or bloodletting, or having it performed, and if the blood appears. When the blood appears. So if one performs cupping or cupping is performed on him and he adds the stipulation that the blood appears, then his fast is invalid. As you can see, we always, you probably noticed the trend, we always take the opinion of the author, we somewhat talk about it a little bit, and then we go off from there. But just because we state the opinion of the author initially doesn't mean that's the correct opinion, as you've seen many times already. But we're going by a curriculum. We're going by this curriculum. So we have to go off those statements. That's how fiqh is taught. So the author here says, ظَهَرَ دَمٌ, blood appears. He added the stipulation that blood appears during cupping, because some people, blood doesn't appear during their cupping. And that's why he added that stipulation. The author's statement is general, meaning it could be a cupping at the head, or it could be at the back, or at the shoulders, and it could be a lot of blood, or it could be a little bit of blood. So the statement is general, and he left it general. This fiqh issue of cupping and whether it voids the fast is called among the ulama, among the rare issues of Imam Ahmad, meaning he adopted this opinion and not many others followed along with Imam Ahmad in this opinion. So the first opinion is that of Imam Ahmad in the Hanabila, and it's actually what Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah adopted. And their proof is أفطر الحاجم والمحجوم. In Musnad Ahmad, in Sunan Abi Dawood, and in Nasa'i and others, the cupper and the one for whom cupping is done, both break their fast. The cupper and the one for whom the cupping is done to, both break their fast. The son of Imam Ahmad, Abdullah ibn Imam Ahmad, he said, I heard my father say, this is the clearest, most authentic hadith on voiding the fast of one who cups while he's fasting. Ibn Taymiyyah also considered this hadith authentic, and he adopted this opinion. Many other ulama disagree on the hadith. This is on the hadith. A lot of ulama disagree on the authenticity of that hadith. So that's the first opinion. There's a lot of issues with that hadith that many talk about. The second opinion is the majority of the ulama, the overwhelming majority of the ulama, don't consider cupping something that voids the fast. Their proof on that is the solidly authentic hadith that's in Bukhari. أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم احتجم وهو محرم واحتجم وهو صائم. The Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم had himself cupped while he was in the state of ihram, and had himself cupped while he was fasting. This is in Sahih Bukhari. He himself had himself cupped while he was fasting. There's another narration by Ibn Abbas. It's also in Bukhari, that hijama was deterred from while fasting because of the weakness it causes. Then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam permitted it. Now let's pause here for a second. Why does cupping void someone's fast? We may know why the one who's getting cupped, he gets weak. That's a wisdom. But what about the cupper? The answer to that is it's a matter of ibadah. Matters like this, we really can't explain. We say they're matters of ibadah. We hear, we obey. Whether we know the wisdom or not, we hear and we obey. Rest assured, there's nothing from the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except it's at the peak of wisdom. ذَلِكُمْ حُكْمُ اللَّهِ يَحْكُمُ بَيْنَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَكِيمٌ. That's the judgment of Allah. He judges between you, and Allah is the all-knowing, the all-wise. All-wise. Sometimes we know the wisdom behind matters. Sometimes we know the wisdom through proof. Sometimes it's ijma', consensus. Sometimes it's additional indicators or factors that the ulama teach us. Like in this matter, some said it's a matter of ibadah, some try to do wisdom. That doesn't matter, we follow, we obey. Sometimes due to our limited knowledge and ability, we don't know. And that's due to our lack of wisdom, not due to the lack of wisdom in Allah's ruling. Our mother taught us, radiallahu anha, how to analyze matters like these. Mu'adha said, I asked Aisha, radiallahu anha, ما بال الحائض تقضي الصوم ولا تقضي الصلاة. Mu'adha said to Aisha, why does a woman need to make up fasting but doesn't need to make up the salah on the days she misses when she's on her menstrual cycle? Aisha radiallahu anha said, أحرورية أنت؟ فقالت عائشة أحرورية أنت؟ Are you حرورية? حرورية is a deviant sect of the Khawarij. Mu'adha said, قلت لست بحرورية ولكني أسأل. Mu'adha said, I'm not حرورية, I'm just simply want to know, I'm just asking. قالت كان يصيبنا ذلك فنؤمر بقضاء الصوم ولا نؤمر بقضاء الصلاة. Aisha said, We passed through these phases during the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life, and we were ordered to make up fast, and we weren't ordered to make up the prayers. Simply put, that's how it is. That's how clear and simple it is. If the guidance tells us the wisdom behind it, we know the wisdom. If there's no wisdom, we accept it. That's known to us, we accept it just as strong. وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَنْ يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ بِأَمْرِهِمْ. It's not for a believer, man or woman, when Allah and His Messenger have decreed a matter, that they should have any option in their decision. I say it because a lot of people say, well, why do we have to do that? Why do we have... Yeah, it's good to ask sometimes if the ulama mentioned it, if it's in the proof, but you have to accept it either way. Ibn Taymiyyah tried to show a wisdom in this matter here. He said the one who gets cupped, it's because he gets weak. And if he remains fasting all day, it may affect him either in the short term or possibly in the long term. He said it should only be done by necessity. And if one is in desperate need for hijama, cupping, then he can break his fast and do it. But if he doesn't break his fast, it's just like someone, according to him, who takes medicine to cure his illness and breaks his Ramadan to do so. If it's sunnah fast, of course, you can break your fast, and because, that's totally different. Now, the one doing the cupping, why? He said because back then they used to suck the blood from the cup. They would suck the blood. And when I was younger in Medina, that's how they used to do it. That's how I remember him used to doing it by the haram. Ibn Taymiyyah said because there's a strong chance that they will swallow a portion of the blood. That's why they break their fast. Ibn Taymiyyah said actually it's exceptional that they don't get blood swallowed when they suck it with hijama. And he said rules are not based on what's rare or what's exceptional, so that's why it breaks the one who does the cupping is fast. According to that opinion, if we know the wisdom is like that, that means like today, they don't suck the blood from the cup. There's other means that they do it through. So that means it would not void the fast of the one who does the cupping according to this opinion. Someone will say, but the hadith states, invalidates. But the ulama, like Ibn Taymiyyah, taught us the reason behind the invalidated. So once we know the reason, the illah behind that, and it's that the blood may enter into someone's mouth and to his throat when he sucks from the cup while he's cupping, then we know the reason, we know the illah. That's all based on the Hanbali madhab. I mention all that not because it's a strong opinion, it's actually the weaker opinion. It's not the correct opinion. But we mention that because you're going to be fuqaha, inshallah. We have to know how fuqaha think and analyze and how they go back and forth. That's the first opinion. The second opinion is the majority. They say cupping or cupper, the one who gets cupped and the one who's doing the cupping, they don't void their fast. Their proof is the hadith in Bukhari that the Messenger ﷺ did cupping while he was fasting. Imam Ahmad and Ibn Taymiyyah and a few others state it voids the fast because of the hadith. The cupper and the one for whom cupping is done both break their fast. The correct opinion on this is that had that hadith been authentic, even if it's the Hanbali madhab alone as in this situation, it's the only the Hanbali school of thought that adopted this with a few other ulama. But even though it was that, if this hadith was authentic, it would be done deal on this case. But the hadith is weak and many ulama spoke about it and the issues pertaining to it. So that leaves us with the correct opinion that cupping does not void the fast. What follows this opinion is that if you need to give the doctor a sample of blood, or you need to donate blood, or you bleed a lot out of your nose, all that, there's no authentic proof that it voids the fast. And it does not void the fast. Now, according to those who say, the Hanabila and Ibn Taymiyyah, according to those who say, which is the weaker opinion, that cupping voids the fast, Okay, we go back to them and say, what about if someone wants to donate or give blood, or to a doctor as a sample? They divided into two opinions. According to the Hanbali madhab, they said that type of giving blood does not break your fast, because they said this is a matter of ibadah. The reason behind it is that it's cupping. The messenger said, one who does cupping voids his fast, and it's a matter of ibadah, that's it. According to Ibn Taymiyyah, he said, the reason behind it is not that it's just plain ibadah, but we know the wisdom behind it. And that is that it makes someone weak. So according to Ibn Taymiyyah, because he mentioned the wisdom behind it, and he didn't say it was a plain ibadah, as the first opinion said, then anything, donating blood and giving the doctor blood, all that voids the fast. The rajih, the correct opinion is that cupping, whether the one does the cup or the one who's done on, and he bleeds, whether it's a little bit or a lot from cupping, that does not break the fast. There's no authentic proof on that. And the hadith that Imam Ahmad and Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned has a lot of issues with it, in that it's weak. We'll stop here. Jazakumullah khair. Wa sallallahu alayhi Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala